You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Unbiased Science,
where we bring scientific method to the madness.
We're your hosts, Dr. Jess Steyer
and Dr. Sarah Scheinman.
And today we are talking about something that does not get talked about enough, and that is antimicrobial resistance. We have a very special guest who Sarah will introduce in just one moment. Before we do, a super quick update on the happenings in public health. Something that caught my attention yesterday was that the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, filed a lawsuit against Kenvue. Kenvue is Johnson & Johnson's consumer health spinoff that manufactures Tylenol, and the lawsuit alleges that the company failed to warn consumers about potential autism and ADHD risks from prenatal Tylenol use. We've talked a little bit about this. We've certainly tackled it on social media and in Substack. This is really baseless. I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here because this got me really heated. This is contributing to so much fear and confusion around Tylenol use in pregnancy. As a reminder, there is no proven causal association between Tylenol use and autism. Our best available evidence shows us that there is no link between the two. There have been some observational studies that have shown some positive association. However, those are not causal. The authors of those studies have actually explicitly said that they're not causal. And the authors were not able to disentangle, okay, is it the Tylenol or is it the underlying reason why the pregnant mom reached for the Tylenol that could have some sort of a link potentially to autism. So this is really frustrating. We have a lot of very scared pregnant people in our DMs right now, and it's just really, really disheartening to see that. And a reminder that a lawsuit does not equate to science. I also just wanted to give a shout out to Ellen, who sent me an email. Ellen is in her signature, she wrote a tired biology teacher who very sweetly and gently corrected something that I said. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I used the colloquial word. I think I said theory instead of hypothesis when talking about, what was I talking about? This idea that there's some sort of a link between folate, like a folate deficiency and autism. And I said it was a theory, but in reality, as Ellen nicely pointed out, it's actually a hypothesis because there is no solid evidence showing any sort of connection between the two. So thank you so much, Ellen. Shout out to you and all the other amazing teachers out there for doing the Lord's work.
No, I think it's a really important distinction. I mean, because hypothesis comes before theory, right? Hypothesis is something that scientists come up with. And then the idea behind a hypothesis is that it's testable, right? So you can design a set of experiments to directly test it to determine whether or not it is in fact the case. And once enough experimental evidence has been gathered, then we can kind of transition it into that theory.
I was giving it too much credit, right? You know, I think made it seem like there was more to it. So really, thank you so much for pointing that out.
I mean, it seems like we're splitting hairs here, but really it's an important distinction.
Well, it is. And this is a science podcast, and I should have chosen my words more carefully. I was sort of using that, informal, like I said, colloquial, use of the word theory. But anyhow, we have really important stuff to talk about today. So, Sarah, can you introduce our guest?
Absolutely. All right, so today we are joined by Dr. Jumana Musmar. She is a distinguished global policy expert and results-oriented leader with decades of intimate government experience within the U.S. Departments of Health and Human Services, Defense, and Agriculture. She excels in cross-functional coordination, strategic planning, operational design, and policy execution. Dr. Musmar is the founder of Advisors of Global Health, a consulting firm specializing in government and external affairs, policy and product development, and coalition building. She also co-founded this and serves as the chief executive officer of the Antimicrobial Strategic Coalition, an independent organization that leads cross-sector coordination to establish a unified stance on U.S.-based policy positions on antimicrobial resistance across the One Health spectrum. As the executive director of the Presidential Advisory Council on Combating Antibiotic-Resistant Bacteria for over a decade, she first established and led the PACCARB's operations, liaising with over 600 experts in human, animal, and environmental domains across government, industry, and academia. Dr. Musmar holds a PhD in biodefense and international security from George Mason University, a master's degree in biomedical science policy and advocacy from Georgetown University. Dr. Musmar, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to learn from you.
That was such a kind intro. Thank you. I was like, wow, it's really long.
Also makes me feel really lazy and pathetic.
Not at all.
Yeah, Jess, what have you been doing with your life?
Oh my God. No, but also just on a personal note, so that's a really unbelievable background and experience, just so badass. But also you'll see as Jumana speaks that she is so cool, and we've connected on a bunch of other things. We're both married to emergency physicians, so we've bonded over that miserable experience. We love our partners. However, it is a very unique experience being married to someone who's, married to medicine, to their jobs, and has to be in the ER all the time. So yeah.
I mean, like I said, the juggle is a struggle. So we're constantly trying to hold it down as much as possible, maintain our sanity, but also keep doing what we're doing. So
well, we have a lot to get into. We kick off every episode with the same question. So, Jumana, what is a news item that caught your attention, and why should people care about it?
So this is a news item that caught my attention, but I don't think it caught the attention of the rest of the United States, our citizens here, and probably the world. So a recent WHO report came out with a really alarming statistic that the rates of what we call antimicrobial resistance, and what that is that they're superbugs, pretty much bacteria, fungi, and other pathogens that have developed and evolved to pretty much evade all of our arsenal of defenses, our antibiotics, our antifungals. They know how to get around it. Well, the problem is that finally the surveillance that we've had around the world with limited data, and we're not talking about the entire gamut, has shown that 1 in 3 women all over the world have resistant UTIs. I'm not joking.
No.
Yes. So the rates of resistance for urinary tract infections in people has risen to 1 in 3, which is really, really crazy if you think about it.
That's wild.
That is wild. And there are 2 other superbugs that have also evolved at a 30 to 50% increase in resistance. And so these numbers are scary, and I don't think people really understand how quickly it's evolved from our last data set and how ubiquitous it's becoming. So just because it's over there doesn't mean it's not coming this way here. And to some degree, it's already here. So my job now is to make sure that we keep making what I call AMR loud. It is a loud, loud issue. We just need to open our ears and open our eyes and make those connections, because if our antibiotics don't work, flat out, we're all screwed. And we're at that point, unfortunately, especially when it comes to like immunocompromised patients, cancer patients, surgeries, you name it. You go into the hospital for one thing, but you may end up leaving in different forms for an entirely different reason. And usually it's because you picked up a resistant pathogen.
I can't even, I'm stuck on this 1 in 3 UTI statistic. I'm someone who I used to have recurrent, frequent UTIs. They are brutal. And, you want to get treated right away. So I actually had a UTI that I treated, but I guess it was the wrong antibiotic. And so it continued to spread up my system there. It ended up in my kidneys. I developed pyelonephritis, which landed me in the hospital. And people don't realize, that could, if not treated properly and immediately, you can develop sepsis, which is a life-threatening condition. This is very, very serious stuff.
Yeah.
So how did we get here? How did the situation get so out of control?
So there's a multitude of reasons, right? So this is what we work on as part of what I've done with the government over the past decade plus, is bring in human health, animal health, agricultural health, environmental health. And there was this whole of one health effort that brings in all of these different sectors to discuss this issue. I don't want to compare it to climate change because climate change has been this silent issue for such a long time. It's a lot louder now, and we're still not doing anything about it. But this is so much more dire because, to me personally, because you are dealing with pathogens and disease that spreads, it's mainstream, right? And so because of human nature, we are just reactive. We are not proactive when it comes to doing things. And so even when the discovery of antibiotics happened, people's lifespans increased. Everyone thought antibiotics were the saviors of all things. So the more, the better. So if you had a sniffle, you'd pop a pill. If you had any sort of ailment whatsoever, there was this social behavior that you just kept taking this penicillin or its derivatives over the years to solve it. So sometimes it's appropriate. You're actually killing the bug. Other times, and most of the time actually, from the data we've seen, it's not appropriate because what you're doing is that you're messing with the good bacteria that's in your gut and the good bacteria that's in your body. You're allowing for the bad ones to continue to thrive and grow. And even the good ones start saying, I need to maneuver and survive. And they start developing resistance, which in your case, Jess, probably, like if I were to oversimplify the situation, you took the wrong antibiotic for a pathogen that just kept evading it and ended up recruiting homies with it to be able to get worse.
Right. Exactly.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada? Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
On this show, as entrepreneurs, we often talk about the courage it takes to start something from scratch. Every successful brand begins with a vision, a purpose, and someone willing to take a chance on an idea. And while every founder's journey is different, many share the same determination to overcome obstacles, innovate, and build something meaningful from the ground up. That's why I always enjoy hearing founder stories, because behind every product is a real person who has invested time, energy, and passion into building something meaningful. Walmart is helping customers discover products from thousands of small brands while giving founders opportunities to grow, reach new communities, and share the stories behind their businesses. By making it easier to discover these brands, Walmart helps connect customers with innovative products and the entrepreneurs whose passion, resilience, and creativity help bring them to market. So whether you're an entrepreneur yourself or a dream driver looking to be inspired, it's exciting to see more opportunities for small brands to be discovered. Visit walmart.com to learn more about the small brands and founder stories available in your community.
So when we're talking about antimicrobial resistance, are we specifically talking about resistance of these? So you mentioned superbugs. Is it specifically resistance to antibiotics?
Resistance to antibiotics. And thank you for mentioning that, Sarah, because one of the issues we've had as a community over the year, like when I say community, like the AMR community, the people that are working on this day and night and talking shop and policy, is our messaging. We're trying to simplify a wicked problem that is so is so complicated, so to speak, because it has so many different facets to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've come up with like a range of vocab. So AMR in particular is antimicrobial resistance. So we're talking about the actual condition itself. It's the resistance of these pathogens to our antimicrobials. These pathogens are called what we call superbugs. And they're superbugs because they're able to evade all of the arsenal that we have, the antibiotics, the antifungals, you name it, that we have. So we're having a hard time as a community making sure that the messaging is right, because some people misconstrue AMR resistance as a good thing. Like, I'm resistant. You are not resistant. If it's, we're talking specifically about the disease itself, not about your ability to resist. And so that's the distinction that we have to make. And just, you had asked about, why we're in this situation. And aside from like human behavior, the way our world is set up, unfortunately, is, like I said, we're very reactive to things once they are very, very bad. So and I know that we are very concerned about our food safety and our food health and everything else. Well, over years, because of evolution and nature in particular, these bugs have evolved and they're able to burn through more orchards and hurt our animals even more than before. So the little farmer or a little, producer is able to say, listen, I got to make ends meet and I got to figure things out. So they use things that are a little bit more toxic and a little bit stronger. Well, it's this negative feedback cycle that ends up happening. So now you have a dependence on the structure that's there. You have an increase in food demand because our population is just growing. They gotta be able to supply. And so it's this constant movement towards overuse in that sense. Now, in the US, luckily, the FDA has gotten a grip on this stuff about 8 or 7 years ago. I want to say 8 years ago, with a guidance for industry that came out that said, listen, this use of antibiotics to grow animals, you got to cut it out. And so that's what happened. There is now regulation in the US that's been there for a while that says only use these antibiotics when medically necessary. If you need to treat an animal, that's when you use it, but don't prophylactically put it into your system just so that you can like safeguard them, so to speak, or make them fluffier and bigger and meatier.
I think you mentioned an important point.
So, a lot of people don't know that, by the way.
I was going to say a lot of people don't realize it, because when we hear antibiotics, we think like, oh, it's something that you take when you have a UTI like Jess's, or when you have, like a bacterial infection, you take antibiotics. But what I'm hearing from you is that there's widespread use of antibiotics and antimicrobials in general in the world at large, when it comes to agriculture, raising animals. And is that what is contributing, that widespread use to this antimicrobial resistance?
Absolutely. So it's multifactorial, right? You've got human behavior when it comes to our own health and ourself. If I were to really like kind of break it down, you've got food in particular. We've gotten a grip on things here in the United States. The rest of the world hasn't. Okay, so because they don't have the same level of regulation, they don't have the same rules in place. And so the overuse when it comes to either just going to a pharmacy without a prescription, I have a sniffle, my throat hurts, I'm just going to go and buy an Augmentin, and you could do that easily. And unfortunately, it's those parts of the world that have these crazy numbers of resistant pathogens that are just getting out of control. The food component is a big one, and then you have to talk about the environment, and we'd be remiss not to talk about the environment, because manufacturing, other components as well, all wash into our waterways, into our soil. You're talking about waste. These are all force multipliers, as like we like to call it, that increase the exponential evolution of these bugs to get worse and worse and worse. And I have to mention this, and I know regardless of where you fall on the spectrum when it comes to anything political, conflict and war have made the situation 100 times worse. And I mean this wholeheartedly, because the data that's coming out of parts in Ukraine, in Gaza, and elsewhere, the numbers are about 80 to 90% resistant.
Oh my God.
Scary stuff. So you've got something like Ukraine that's landlocked, and there's already data from the CDC showing that part of the dispersal, when you have people displaced and immigrate, you have birds that actually land in certain regions and pick up the stuff and move. And then you've got regions like Gaza that have hundreds of thousands of tons and bombs and heat that have mixed with the soil, mixed with decomposing bodies, mixed with waste, and just a tremendous situation. But the distinction here, it's washing into the ocean. So all of that is making its way. So regardless of the walls or the visas or the borders we have, nature is making its way through and definitely pushing the fast forward button on resistance becoming more of an issue globally. So that's a message that I really, really want to make sure people hear. So regardless of where you stand on anything, just know that the impact that we make when it comes to conflict in particular is having disastrous implications that are going to end up at your doorstep, if not already here.
So this is very clearly a global issue. How are we, well, first of all, I'm curious, what has the response been internationally? And then what are we in the United States doing about this?
Great question. So there has been a United Nations General Assembly last year that took place. And it is pretty much bringing the world together to say, we recognize this as an issue. Let's discuss it. Let's come up with a declaration and all sign on to it. So there was a declaration that was there. The U.S. did not commit to it. Okay. But the U.S. was an active participant. And we've done a ton over the last decade plus to make sure that our efforts are coordinated. Okay. So the rest of the world's continue to do stuff. In the U.S., things are now a little bit more quiet for obvious reasons. And there are competing priorities in terms of what should and shouldn't happen. So part of my role within the government over the last 10 years was to bring in all of these communities, have these discussions, and find what brings us together all the time. And so post-government now, my effort is to continue that momentum and bring in the animal health, the human health, the environmental health, the agricultural communities to say, hey, let's rebuild that collegiality and camaraderie so that we have good, safe practices. We encourage the need for more safe food and healthy food on your tables. Let's try to build a better future for our kids down the line, because the answer in the US now is we have to reach sideways and have partners hand in hand with states and locals and communities and educate more about the situation. And so it's a really long answer to your question, but the recognition is becoming a lot higher. There's a lot more awareness about the issue. And literally at a baseline, what everyone can do for each other right now is when somebody gets sick, ask the question, is it a virus or is it a bacteria? And please, for the love of God, you mentioned school. So I think you have school teachers that listen into this show. Stop using hand sanitizer. And I know it takes a few minutes longer. Please use soap and water for these kids to wash their hands. I know that hand scanning is a behavior that we started during COVID. It was a lovely little shortcut. You just squirt a little bit, they go and move. It is doing more harm than good. Soap and water is the best thing that you could do, because once you continue these good habits, they take it home and they move on. And the kids teach their parents.
Yeah.
On this show, as entrepreneurs, we often talk about the courage it takes to start something from scratch. Every successful brand begins with a vision, a purpose, and someone willing to take a chance on an idea. And while every founder's journey is different, many share the same determination to overcome obstacles, innovate, and build something meaningful from the ground up. That's why I always enjoy hearing founder stories, because behind every product is a real person who has invested time, energy, and passion into building something meaningful. Walmart is helping customers discover products from thousands of small brands while giving founders opportunities to grow, reach new communities, and share the stories behind their businesses. By making it easier to discover these brands, Walmart helps connect customers with innovative products and the entrepreneurs whose passion, resilience, and creativity help bring them to market. So whether you're an entrepreneur yourself or a dream driver looking to be inspired, it's exciting to see more opportunities for small brands to be discovered. Visit Walmart.com to learn more about the small brands and founder stories available in your community.
Say more. Why is it that we shouldn't use hand sanitizer? Why is
Hand
that doing
sanitizer is a
more harm?
disinfectant. It's like you're putting Clorox on your hands. So you're not only messing with the good microbiome and layer that's on your hand, but you're also promoting resistance down the line, because they're going to be able to find a way to go against the sterility of the situation. So when you're disinfecting all the time, think about it as an antibiotic for your hands.
Oh.
Use it when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use it all the time. Use it when you need it. I think I should come up with a dance. Like use it when you
use
need
it when you
Tattoo it
right.
on your
Yeah.
forehead.
But and the other thing, I think we've spoken about this in the past offline, is that instinct parents, right? When we go to the pediatrician, our kid is sick. It's like you hate seeing your child sick, and you go and you want to leave with something tangible. Here, I have an action step to help my child, right? And so we want to
100%.
leave with a prescription. So often parents, we don't really like to hear, well, let's wait and see, which is often what you do when you suspect a viral illness, right? Because antibiotics are not appropriate for viral illnesses. But oftentimes parents, so, we don't want to wait and see, but that is, so it's sort of a culture shift. I think that's required. And it's not always easy when you see your kid, not feeling well.
You don't want to see them have a fever, low energy. Usually they're doing cartwheels. Like my kid doesn't walk straight. She walks in circles. Okay. So she's constantly doing cartwheels. So when she gets sick, it hurts my heart, right? Because you want to see that happiness, that energy. But we also have to come to terms with the fact that we need to allow their immune system to respond, but only if we know with what they have. And this is where I have to give a strong shout out to the diagnostics community. Diagnostics are the answer. They are the cornerstone of do no harm for any physician. Because if you're able, or for any kid, so to speak, pediatricians in particular have a lot to deal with when it comes to children. I mean, we were talking about school teachers, and God bless them, they are doing the Lord's work. So imagine dealing in that same situation with an ailing, screaming kid. Okay. When a kid comes, the parent should advocate for themselves to say, hey, and because the doctor's happy to do it, usually they just get pushed back, right? Now let's check what they have. Let's do a strep test. Let's do a COVID test. Like, let's check to see so we can narrow down. And as you narrow down the disease spectrum of what it is, and you get to that baseline bacteria versus virus, the pediatricians are going to give you things that you need to deal with when it comes to the virus, like control their fever, just make them comfortable. They're going to have to go through it. But if they have strep throat, which we all know, if it gets worse, it sucks. And if it gets worse, it's miserable, not just for your child, but for everyone. That's when you need to get the antibiotic, but also finish the appropriate dose. Don't stop when they feel better and act better.
And sometimes, we have leftover antibiotics in our medicine cabinet. Right? When you're not feeling well, don't just say, oh, I'm just going to take an antibiotic. Yeah, you don't reach for those pills in your medicine cabinet. And then the other thing I was thinking about is, there are broad spectrum antibiotics. There are more, targeted antibiotics. And I don't know. And this is really outside of my scope, and maybe, I don't know, maybe not appropriate for this chat, but I think our diagnostics are getting better. This is why it's so important to go and try to figure out, okay, what strain of bacteria, right, do I have? So you could take a more targeted antibiotic versus the broad spectrum. Sometimes broad spectrum is necessary, but sometimes it's not. So it depends. So I think, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to, drop off my pee to see what strain of bacteria my UTI is. But it's important to take that step so you're taking the right, or first determining if you need the antibiotic and then which antibiotic is appropriate, because they're all different.
100%. And just to add on to that as well, I have to mention this because, like I said, these bugs are getting nastier, right? And so knowing which one gives you the value of the diagnostic, right? And so the problem that we have is that there is a lack of recognition in our reimbursement system. That is, and this is why this conversation is so critical, that because you have to advocate for yourself, things with insurance and everything else adapt when the bottom rises up. And the bottom being us as a population and a community, not the decision makers up top, right? And so the demand needs to be that I need to know, I need to have better control over my care, because I'm aware of the fact that if I am misdiagnosed because of a clinical, urgent care looks at you, they're like, I think you have this. Here's a Z-Pack. That's not going to jive anymore, because you have to be aware of the fact that if you have a virus and you take a Z-Pack, you are messing with your gut, you're making yourself worse, and you're adding to the problem for yourself and your kids.
Right. So not only is nothing going to happen, but it's going to make the situation worse.
100%. Not just that, you're making yourself vulnerable for other diseases as well. It's not just bacteria that's out there. Do you know how horrible a yeast infection is?
Girl,
Yes.
do I?
I think we do.
We have to be aware of these things in our bodies and how things. So just because of that temporary fix, I'm like, oh, I'm taking something, I'm going to feel so much better. You're going to feel a lot worse for the months after when the doctor can't figure out what you have.
Right.
Because you've messed up so much. But I also have to add one more point, Jess, that we're at a point today that companies are doing their best to try to develop antibiotics that are narrow spectrum, like you said, which means they're targeted towards these resistant, nasty bugs. You know, there's something called nightmare bacteria in hospitals.
No, what is that?
What's that?
That's your husband. Yeah.
Try not to ask too much about what's going on.
Nightmare bacteria exists because it's there. They can get rid of it with all their infection prevention practices. Hospitals are doing their best. And I'm just going to give a shout out, especially to our husbands in particular that have gone through the gamut, that it is not easy dealing with 30 people in the waiting room, running around, doing your best to disinfect when you're already burnt out and you already have a workforce shortage, okay, and you're not getting supported and you don't have the right tools in place. And we are the world's superpower, okay? So our public health infrastructure since COVID has yet to be augmented and supported. And if not, we are in a much worse situation right now because we have an incredibly huge population of emergency physicians that aren't matching in schools because everyone's like, I want to be a surgeon, a dermatologist, that makes money. I am not going to be in this thankless, like low paying job that's going to expose myself and my family and hear, just complaints all day. You're not going to have nurses anymore in the hospital system because they found other places to be. I mean, who would want to go into it, honestly, unless you actually have that commitment and gusto?
Not to mention that, one more shout out to our hubbies, but emergency docs, highest burnout rate. They retire the youngest. You're on your feet all day. You don't even have time to pee, grab a sip of water. Then you have people who are angry, that they've been waiting in the waiting room for so long. I mean, then you have the administration saying, see more and more patients. And then the patients want you to spend more time with them and better, bedside, all that. It is, yes, all praise.
And you're cross-coordinating, right? So that's another thing. So when you see your ER physician, they have to figure out who is the next best person for you to deal with. So then you have to deal with that other person's burden and their burnout and their complaints and their load. So it is the definition of like cross-functional job. So please, if you go to the ER or the urgent care, I don't know if I can say this, don't be an
You can say it.
Yeah.
Someone needs to say it.
Please.
Okay, I just want to make sure because they're all trying their best to get to see you. But yes, your sore throat is actually low on the priority scale when it comes to somebody's amputated arm. Like, relax.
Right. There are people dying here is what, my husband Ethan always says. And, they should have a sign over the ER. Humans work here. There are people coming in with every type of thing. You have to know a little bit about everything, right? To assess what's going on. I mean, my goodness. And then you're dealing with people who want to be treated, but you don't know what's the appropriate treatment. And you're ordering tests, but then the tests cost money. And are they warranted? And then you're concerned about liability. I mean, it's unbelievable. I have so much respect. So yes.
100%. If we're in a system where the docs have the right tests that make their lives easier and they have the right medication in their formulary to say, you know what, you have this one thing, here is this one thing that specifically addresses that and doesn't mess up with anything else in your body. And I feel like, and let's talk about the positives, in the sense that
yes, please.
Innovation is definitely catching up. AI is making everyone's lives easier, but please use it judiciously. Like, it uses a lot of water, but that's a whole other conversation for you to have in another podcast. Because every question you ask uses a liter of water to cool down the system. And so that's a whole other direction. So ask the right questions and learn how to use your prompts. But in any case, I digress. The bottom line is advocate for yourself. And the more that physicians here and the staff and the people that make the decisions and industry and your governors and your lovely Hill people hear from their bases that we need the appropriate drugs, but matching that is the appropriate diagnostic. You don't want to just have more pills to treat a situation and make it worse. You got to use them right, and you got to take care of the ones that you have. And so there's a lovely metaphor that Dr. John Rex has, who is very near and dear to my heart. He's somebody that's been on our council, and he's been actively and working on this. He created a metaphor like a fire hydrant, right? So, and novel antibiotics and all antibiotics should be treated like you buying a fire hydrant. It's in your house, it's there, but you don't use it unless you need to. And this is akin to the novel antibiotics that we're trying to have that aren't going to make these companies money. Let's be clear. There's a reason why we don't have these new antibiotics and these new medicines to treat these nasty resistant nightmare bugs, because the market doesn't allow it. The market is very simple. It's demand and supply. High demand, high supply, you make money. In this situation, we're trying to limit the demand as much as possible so that we don't overuse it and we don't put ourselves in the same situation. So companies that start off with this aren't able to make it through. And a ton of them, there are more companies that have filed for bankruptcy than survived right now. Okay, because the system needs to be changed. The market for this particular area needs to be changed in a way that has government interference to say, listen, we're going to subsidize you. We're going to disassociate the value of what you're providing from its use. So you're going to get paid a certain amount of money. Let's have this in our arsenal if we need to use it, and we'll use it when we need to.
Right. All right. Joanna, what is something that is giving you hope these days?
You know, I'll tell you, yes, it is a new day. It is a new dawn. It is not business as usual. And we're in an era where we have to think differently about how we support each other and how we continue to do the work that we've done. And it is incredibly critical that we're innovative about how we try to solve a problem and let go of the past. Like, it's okay. It's okay to change things and do it a little better in a different way. So, for example, states and locals, especially states in particular, are now finding ways to be able to tag team laterally as opposed to vertically with the government as much, to be able to find their support and find their way, especially as we go through cold and flu season. Hurricane season is upon us. I mean, there's so many things that we've relied tremendously on Big Daddy federal government that is not the case anymore. And we have to be just realistic about it. And so that level of reaching out and partner with people that you would have never thought. We all agree on so many different things and have so many synergies. Let's focus on that and let's leave all the noise out of the way.
Yeah.
Let's separate all the noise. Let's separate what sets us apart, and let's try to find something that we can all agree on. And we all agree.
Yes.
We all agree that we want to have a healthier household. We all agree that we want to have a healthier tomorrow. And we all agree that we want to have our kids grow up happy and just living life and not have to worry about the cluster that we created previously.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, that was such a great way to wrap things up, too.
Well, thank you for the conversation, ladies. This was fun.
Sarah's going to take us home.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you learned a thing or two. I certainly did. Please join us next week on your trusted source for no nonsense, just science.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.